Following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and hilarious story that repeats over and over, and spoilers and adult language and a hilarious story that repeats over and over, and spoilers and adult language and a hilarious story. It repeats over and over.
Are you okay?
What?
I said, are you okay? I mean, you're just repeating the disclaimer over and over.
I am?
Yeah, you are.
I am?
Yeah, you are.
I am?
This isn't going anywhere. Okay, people, the following podcast contains spoilers and adult language. Roll the opening credits and music, please.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And this is episode number 264.
And I'm Steve.
Yeah, you're funny. See what he did there, folks? He's a comedy genius. Anyway, folks, like I was saying, 264 is our episode number. This week we're going to be covering episode 2 of season 1 of Tales of the Walking Dead. Title of the episode is Blair / Gina. It's weird because with the titles, I don't want to say Blair and Gina because that's not how they write it. But right. I feel weird saying Blair / Gina. It sounds very like I'm trying to be hip and it's not. Like literally, it's Blair and a slash and Gina.
And then Gina.
And
yes.
that's it, people.
Yeah.
But I've heard other people and they're like last week, Joe and Evie. I'm like, no, that's not how it says. There's a slash there. You said it wrong. But
there's no and. There's no and.
There's no and. There's no and there. All right. Anyway, before we fall apart.
And I'm Steve.
More. I am. Oh, I love it. Did you go first or did I go first?
No, you went first last week. So
all right, so you go first. What did you think of this week's episode?
I really like.
Other than your name is Steve.
And I'm Steve. No, yeah. I really like this episode. Clearly better than last week's episode. And I didn't hate last week's episode. Last week's episode was just kind of You know, it was great. It was fine. It wasn't awesome. It wasn't terrible. It was okay. This episode I really liked a lot. The only critique that I have of this episode is I kind of think that they didn't stick the landing. Okay. And that the ending, I think it kind of fizzled out, and there's a specific point in the episode where literally they zig when I thought they were gonna zag with the story, and I was like, oh, okay, and then they didn't, and then they totally didn't do it, and I'm like, oh, and that kind of threw me a little, but. That's the only complaint. Parker Posey and Jillian Bell are amazing together. They're funny. There's lots of comedy in this episode. And it was a hoot. And again, it's a Parker Posey joint. And just about everything she does is like this as far as I'm concerned. You know, she is always entertaining, and this was no exception. What did you think?
I thought it was thanks for your thoughts. I thought that it was a hilarious, not perfect episode. I agree exactly with what you said. I think it was an improvement over last week in terms of like drawing me in. I didn't dislike last week's story. I just think there was not as many things to make me go, oh, what's going to happen next? This was like, first of all, the format. I mean, obviously we're going to dig into that, but the Groundhog Day style format was something we've never seen before. The comedic aspect was just, I mean, like you said, it's Parker Posey's world and we're just living in it. And I'm not as familiar with Jillian Bell, and she was just hilarious. She's really great. But I think they balanced the horror and the drama with the comedy as well. I mean, obviously that comedy is their strength in this episode, but there were some moments where you're like, holy crap. And, overall, I think this was, again, not perfect. There was some stuff, like you said, I think that the ending was a little bit weak, but overall, I really, really liked this episode. And it's funny because most people I'm seeing online did not care for this one, and and I get it. Maybe it's just the style wasn't their cup of tea, but I thought it was great. I liked the differentness of it too. So.
Yeah, I agree, and I think some of our feedback that we'll get to later on, I was a little surprised where some people were because I thought, oh my God, people are gonna really, after last week, they're gonna be like, this is so much better, and that wasn't really the case. So I don't know why that's the case, but that you're right, that does seem to be what's going on. But anyway, again, we both liked it. 2 thumbs up.
Yes.
All right, so we'll see you next week.
Okay, that's all, folks. I am. Anyway, I'm just gonna do that at random points.
Oh, the whole episode is gonna be we're gonna start over like 3 times, people. You know that, right?
As long as you're still Steve, then we're fine. Just that's the constant. So, anyway, so let's move on to discussing the episode. But before we get into that, let's do a quick recap of what the whole episode is about with a quick description of the episode. Steve, why don't you go ahead and take that away?
All right. Well, this week's episode of Tales of the Walking Dead is being brought to you by Circle of Trust Insurance. We see it on the news every day. People attacking people, almost out of nowhere, going crazy, scratching, biting. It's easy to be scared by these stories, and studies have shown they can cause cortisol and stress hormone levels to rise. And when people are scared, they panic. Panic equals accidents. And that's where Circle of Trust comes in. Home, auto, motorcycle, exploding tanker truck, boat, zombie apocalypse, flood, and yes, even hurricane. At Circle of Trust, we have insurance covering you for every reality. Do you already have a policy but are afraid that you don't have enough coverage? Then upgrade your policy today with our Nervous Patrons Incentive Program. Circle of Trust. Here, now, and always. So call now. Operators are standing by, unless they went out for a snack, because then they're probably stuck in a time loop and won't come back.
Okay, that was hilarious. I loved it, and I feel like we need to have that be at the beginning of the podcast. I don't know, not just the ad in the middle, but at the beginning. So anyway,
hey, we certainly can. We can put it into the middle rotation of ads if you'd like.
Sure thing. Who would even notice? That's the thing. If we play it in the middle of during our break, I wonder who'll notice if we slide it in there.
Well, the funny thing is that all of that script, or I'd say 90% of it, are lines from the episode.
Shut up! I love it.
Like the one guy that's wants to leave to go get his family. He's the one that says, people are attacking people like almost out of nowhere, going crazy, scratching, biting, and Parker Posey talks about the cortisol and the hormone levels and all that, and then. I don't know if you noticed, but when the camera first pushes in on the outside of the office, one of the posters in the windows is Circle of Trust. We have insurance covering you for every reality. So right off the bat, they're already setting us up to to what's to come there. So to have a
non-reality.
Yeah, or just multiple realities, or whatever's going on here with the repeating. So anyway, it just kind of all came together. I'm like, ooh, I know what I'm gonna do. So
love it. All
right, so moving on to the actual description. Again, this is Tales of the Walking Dead, episode 1.2, Blair / Gina. In a fast-paced, reality-twisting, buddy action heist. Don't really remember the heist part, but okay. A disgruntled receptionist and her overbearing boss are trapped together as the city of Atlanta collapses under the Walker apocalypse, forcing them to work together in order to escape the city. That is your episode description.
All right. Before we get into our points, let's talk a little bit about the writer and the director, if we could.
Sure.
You've got that listed there.
I do. Our writer, and now I guess I think about it, I guess the stealing the tanker, that's the heist, right? I guess that's what we're supposed to believe is the heist. I don't know. Whenever I think heist, I think of like, diamonds or, banks.
Or
and stuff
money
like that,
or
right?
guns or something, yeah.
Casinos, I mean, it's just like, okay, you're just like carjacking that guy. Does that really qualify as a heist? I don't know. But anyway, okay, I get it. All right, so our writer is a gal named Kari Drake.
Okay.
And she is actually a producer on Tales of the Walking Dead as well. And this is actually so far her only Walking Dead credit as a writer. So this is her sort of Walking Dead universe debut.
Interesting.
But she has written a bunch of other television for other shows. She's written for the shows Defiance, for a show from a few years ago called Limitless. For a show called Insatiable, and then I thought most interestingly she wrote for the, I want to say, Netflix series Lost in Space, which is the reboot of that, which is notable because Parker Posey plays Dr. Smith in that, so she has had some experience working with Parker Posey already, so I just thought that was kind of an interesting little quinky-dink. And then, of course, our director is the well-known and established director Michael Satrazemis, who is, the dude's he started as a cameraman, worked his way up to directing. He has done 17 Walking Dead episodes, main show. Most notably, he did The Grove, which we usually mention. That's the Look at the Flowers episode with Carol and Crazy Kids. And a bunch of others that were also really good. So he's kind of like right below Nicotero when it comes to like an important episode. He's usually the guy that they tab to do. He's also, unfortunately for us, directed 20 episodes of Fear the Walking Dead. And again, I think that's the same reason. They know he's good at what he does, and so the show is using him. The company is using him. And then he actually is going to direct 2 more of the Tales of the Walking Dead, including next week's. He's directing next week's episode D, which is the Samantha Morton episode. So
very interesting.
And they listed the name of the 3rd episode. I don't, off the top of my head, I can't remember what it was. I did not jot it down, but there will be at least one more coming up that he's going to direct. So, and that is your writer and your director.
All right. So I love the way it starts out with the establishing scene, the establishing scene that will then be repeated in different sort of varying forms. I was like, Steve, why are you making noise? We're recording.
No, I love that the finger drumming that Parker Posey's doing. That that's kind of like the indicator that the day's reset now.
Yeah, exactly. And I like those. There are a couple of little tentpole things they did, obviously, that we see over and over, the mug and things like that. But there are a couple of little things in the beginning. I loved some of the more detail you got with Gina in the beginning when, they're all sort of the very first time through, the associates, the other salespeople, they are, you could tell they're nervous. And Blair is calming them down and telling them all about how this is a good thing. And Gina is very distracted, not so much by nervousness, but you can see every time like Blair asks her a question or tells her to do something that she's hiding something on her desktop, and you get a glimpse of it, and it's literally a list that says Blair's personality disorders. And I thought that was just great. So it sets up, it's funny because the clips we've gotten of this episode leading up to it, it already showed them sort of in that, buddy cop mode where they were working together in some capacity. It didn't show them as much as antagonistic. So for it to start out that way, it was like, wow, Parker Posey is awful. And Gina is just like taking it. And you could see like all that's, you were like, this is really interesting, like the way they set those up. So I really liked that to start off with that first sort of glimpse into, Blair is terrible and she's a bitch, and Gina is this put upon treated poorly person, and you just sort of get that set up right off the bat. And I just loved that little extra, she's hiding it, and, Blair's personality disorders. And for me personally, I laughed a lot more than most people, because I used to work with this girl. This is a quick 2-second story. I used to work with this girl who our boss was terrible. She was a micromanager, and she just was not easy to work with. And I eventually took her, or I left my job and I came back and took this girl's position, the one who was angry and didn't get along with our boss. I was cleaning out her desk and I found the Wikipedia entry for what micromanagement means. She literally printed it off so that she could use it for information against our mutual boss. And I kept it because it just makes me laugh so much that she went so far in her complaining to like the owners or whatever, or writing out these long emails where she was complaining about how she's treated and blah, blah, blah. And she literally printed out the Wikipedia entry. So when I saw Gina's like just listing the Blair's personality disorders, it literally made me think of that. And I was like, this is hilarious on an extra level just for me. So
and I think that applies to everyone who's had a job, even if it's just a high school job up to you're a 20-year veteran somewhere. We've all had that one boss that just you can't stand, that they're awful, that you don't understand how they got there, what did they do to get that job. And many times too, it's because they're picking on you, right? And that's the thing. Gina is clearly the target for Blair. Whenever she wants to vent, she just goes and rips on Gina. Oh
God, yeah.
And I think again that, like you said, it's universal, because right away when you saw it, you had a story. We're like, oh my God. Sure. And I think all of us are like that. We're like, oh my God, I had that boss. I had Blair. I worked for Blair. Yeah. I think we can all of us can say, I'm familiar with that. And that, again, that's just, you're right. It's great because that opening bit, it sets up, the baseline of the story, and at the same time, it totally, very quickly, like in 2-3 minutes, exactly the relationship between Gina and Blair.
Yes. Like without question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I did like their, so they set up like, we both wrote down a couple of quotes and a couple of things here and there, but, they set up the, like who the salespeople are, what their relationship sort of is to both Blair and Gina, in a way. They're kind of like set dressing, but also like set dressing that speaks. It's kind of, because clearly they are the main players of the story, Blair and Gina. But seeing them set up the whole, this person's going to say this, which will make Blair say that. And this person's going to ask about this and it'll make Blair say that. And then the phone will ring and it's going to make Gina do this and and sets up that whole structure, including then the next piece of structure, which is there's the office and then there's the gas station. And so then Blair is with the boyfriend in the car trying to get out of town for the weekend. I'm sorry, air quotes, the weekend. Basically, they're running away because they're scared.
They're going to go live on the island. Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah. And it's funny because we've said before, like, where would you go? And it's like, if I had access to an island, I would go there because you can control who comes in and out, right? So they're doing something kind of smart in the beginning.
Yeah, and unless you're in the Fulci zombie movie, you know that zombies can't swim, so you're good.
Yeah, they can only swim in that movie. Every other instance, they can't.
Right, and basically it has to be Italian or they sink. So
yes, exactly. Those are the rules. And so it sets up the whole thing where she sees Gina. They have their confrontation, and then there's more details with like the zombie that's in the car that it starts to attack the woman. Things start to fall apart. There's the agent in the car with the gun, and he also has a son with him. And
Wendell.
then the tanker is the gas is being delivered right as they're there. And, then Gina goes to her car and gets the shotgun and tells the guy, I need your truck, and da-da-da. So it sets up that sort of structure in place. And when the eventual explosion happens, I just wrote Big Bada Boom because it just made me laugh. And it made me think of, Fifth Element.
Fifth Element, apparently.
Yeah, Big Bada Boom. Yeah. So I liked that sort of structure there where it's like, these are the rules of the Groundhog Day, and then we'll go and do the repeat of it over and over. I see you've got a couple of quotes from that beginning sort of opening setup scene there, especially the one from Blair. That's great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the first thing that I noticed, and again, it's the camera, the first shot we get is the camera pushing in on the outside of the office, and it's glass windows. And again, like I just told you, one of the posters, it literally says, we have, what was the exact line? It was, it says Circle of Trust. We have insurance covering you for every reality. I mean, that's right there, very big letters. It's a blue poster, and you can't miss it. And then on the door, it has the Circle of Trust logo, and then of course it has their kind of tagline, which Gina uses when she answers the phone, which again is really suggestive and helpful, because the tagline is here, now, and always. I mean, they're just telling you, and it's like, it's called Circle. You know what I mean? It's like clearly that this is going to be a loop, type situation going on. And I thought that was clever and fun. But after the so they go in and of course Gina is getting picked on by Blair, and I can't remember what I think Blair starts talking to her like, as long as Gina can handle the call volume or something.
Yeah. And some dig. Yeah. Yeah,
did. And Gina looks at her, and then Blair, she kind of falls back from going something like, she says, that look, she's gonna bite, and she's trying to be funny, and it's funny because, and it is funny because we know there is a reality coming up where Ghoul Gina eats Blair. So,
for sure.
And so and again, I thought that was just a nice little deft little touch there. And of course, again, Parker Posey makes it fun the way she plays it, that she just kind of turns all of her ire on that poor girl.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wanted to make a comment too before we go on with more of the details. But we didn't talk about the opening graphic last week. I think it didn't hit me, and then someone else talked about it on a different podcast, and I was like, I guess I should pause it and take a look at it. So it's actually kind of interesting. If you take a second and pause when it comes up next time you're watching one of these, it actually takes puts the title across the screen, and then the screen is split into like 6 long slices, and there's a graphic inside each one, and it is, I would assume, a graphic from each story, because there's like an explosion one that's clearly got to be this story, and then there's one that's of the motorcycle from Evie and Joe. So I would assume there's like some kind of tidbit in that title card thing that we will then see in the other 4 stories. So obviously we will talk about it for the next few weeks, but there's one panel that is like the explosion, like all the way over on the left, and the music is like normal, but nothing really crazy. But yeah, I think it's interesting the image they chose to use. So
yeah, and I think the skull is kind of in the center. There's a skull there, and then what they do is, after it says Tales of the Walking Dead, and I think it lists Gimple and some of the people that are responsible, that graphic kind of is replaced by a full screen graphic of the episode in question, because it changes to the explosion, and you can see in the fireball is Gina's phone, and some of the keys are flying towards us, exploding, as well as one of the coffee cups. the coffee mugs, and you can you can see like the Circle of Trust logo is on a piece of it, and then there are other like porcelain pieces of it that are blowing up towards you. And so and I think you're right. I think you're right that the other 5 slices of that pie are all going to be indicative of the other 5 episodes, representing them. So and it's interesting that though I would say the music to me is just, it totally doesn't register at all. I'm just like, you know what I mean? If you were to ask me what was it like, I'd be like, I don't know. I mean, I remember there was music, but I couldn't tell you. You know what I mean? It was really kind of like it just didn't register, good or bad. So I don't know what that means.
Yeah, and I think they've got their work cut out for them, because it's like, we make such a thing about talking about the title card for Fear because they made it a thing. They made it different every week. They made it something dynamic that we watch every week. And then when they started becoming more Western influenced, that sort of, couple of licks on the guitar thing that was very Western motif to the music, it all sort of it went together with a big larger theme, whereas the theme is that there's 6 completely different stories. So how do you pick like one musical thing that is sort of tied all together? It just sort of is, it's just a piece of music. It's not meant to do anything except sort of be there, I suppose. So
again, as long as it's not obtrusive, it's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. So I made a note here, and I know you did too, but I started to keep track of the first few Groundhog Day like iterations. So the very first one, the agent shoots the tanker and boom.
Right.
And then in the second one, Gina's trying to get around and she drives into the ditch. Boom, she's gone.
Right.
Well, they're both gone. Then Wendell's in I loved this one because it was so many details. Wendell in the truck, the driver who was shot by Wendell, he reanimates, he bites Gina, and then they run off and then they blow up anyway.
But you have to go further, because Parker Posey jumps onto the back of the tanker, climbs up, runs across the top, and then jumps and lands on the hood.
Yeah. There's so many things in that one iteration. Yeah, it was almost like they were like, well, and that was the last one they did before then they just went into this one, boom, this one, boom, this one, boom, this one. That was the last one they sort of did where it showed sort of all the details until we got to, quote unquote, the final one.
Right.
So I guess, we can talk like details and stuff like that, but the details kind of stay a lot the same, other than like them having the conversation like at work and sort of bonding, etc. But I wrote down a couple of quotes that really hit me. I loved Blair and Gina together. Are we dead? Is this a dream? And Gina's just like, I just wanted a snack. I thought that was great. And then together they're like, this can't be for real. Oh, who knows anymore? It was just like her Parker Posey's like frustration with all kinds of things. You made note of it too, and I hope it turns into a really good meme that people will use for forever. But oh my God, how can you be wearing that many neck accessories?
Oh my,
such a great line.
Yeah, and that actually happens when Gina just kind of is ripping her. She's finally letting Blair have it about what a horrible person she is. Yeah. And then she goes, and how are you wearing that many neck accessories? Oh, I laughed so hard. It was a great line. And again, the two of them are just so game at that kind of comedy, that they just can do it so well. It works, and they work well together too. Yeah. So
I loved it. I really did. And I loved the one where they tried to do something different, and then they came back together and they're like giving their play-by-play. I did this and this happened anyway. Just like, I stayed here and I got eaten.
It was the worst way to go. That's what she said.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot the rest of it.
Yeah.
It was the worst way to go. And that was the scene after we've been seeing that clip for forever where she's like, oh, come on, just do it. And she like gives him the neck.
Yeah. And you're like, why would you do that? Yeah. But now he's like, oh, okay, I know. So, yeah.
Yeah.
There were a lot of fun little details in in the way they set up the gas station events and it's funny because each time they are different. It's not like a complete repeat, they do start, because again, both of them can remember the previous times. So they kind of they make adjustments, they try different things, but I loved like when in the first time when Gina shows up and she goes into the Quickie Mart and they get that shot inside and the Quickie Mart is like picked clean
already,
right?
Yeah.
And she's like, it has this, that, and it kind of, I liked it because this episode is very funny, but there is kind of this underlining dread and horror of like, and again, this is, I read on the Walking Dead wiki, one of the things that's in there is that this episode is taking place on what the World Beyond refers to as Monument Day.
Okay.
Or the day the sky fell, or whatever it was called. Mm-hmm. And so Rick Grimes is in the coma, and it would be season 1 of the main show, before the opening sequence of episode 1 has happened. Rick's been shot, and then it's before he wakes up. This episode's taking place, so people aren't really sure what's going on. Right. But there's this kind of weird dread going on in the background, kind of underneath, it's like an undertone throughout the whole thing of, and you even get some of that in the discussions because Parker Posey's like, oh, it's all just the media. They're blowing it out of proportion. And, this is just a chance for us to capitalize, and we can, what'd she say? The Nervous Patrons Incentive Program, and all this. So, but like some of the, people that work for her are like, should we even be here? They're like, maybe we should, so, and I like that shot of the Quickie Mart where it was literally, there's like 2 things on the 8 shelves that you see. And, and I just kind of like that because it really helped underscore that, this is actually not good, Yeah. And so I really like that. And then the other thing that I thought was just a wonderful touch was, the first time the tanker explodes and then it resets back to the office and she's again and then she starts to talk and Blair starts to talk what she was saying and she coughs up all of this white smoke out of her mouth.
I totally missed that. I didn't see it, and that's an awesome detail.
Oh, yeah. And she immediately like puts her hand up to her mouth and she's like and then one of the one guy, the kind of like the top salesman who had his picture on the wall, he's like, are you okay? And then she kind of, at this point, she doesn't realize it's a repeat and she's looping. And so she just kind of shakes it off and kind of goes back into what she's doing. And then, and they did it again because when the one where the trucker sits up and bites Gina on the shoulder, when we reset back in the office, Gina is screaming and she has her hand up where the bite was.
Yes.
And then she suddenly realizes she's in the office and she looks at her hand and you can see around her fingernails, she has blood.
That's awesome.
And so again, it's like these little echoes of these previous, loops are carrying through. And I thought that was super clever. I really like that. It's a little touch. It's really small, but they're there and it kind of goes in there really nice. So that I thought was really fun. Let's see what else we did that. That when they get to the montage part and we see, we see them just blowing up repeatedly, doing different stuff, and the best one by far is when Parker Posey's driving the truck and she's kind of got this look like we did it, and then zombie Gina sits up and and then boom, it explodes. It's so great, right? But then I mean, what do you think we see? Like 6, 7 versions of them blowing up in that little montage, maybe, right?
At least, yeah.
At least, well, when it cuts back to them in the office after that's over, my first thought about the Groundhog Day scenario is that however many times we saw them blow up, it's the number of times they actually did it is way more. And I go by what the late great Harold Ramis repeatedly said in interviews about Groundhog Day when he was asked, how long was the Bill Murray character stuck living that day? Because in the Groundhog Day movie, it's a very similar setup. We see him redoing the day a couple of times in long form, and then you get the montage of him doing all the crazy stuff, right? And Harold Ramis always said that, Bill Murray's character spends years reliving that day, and I mean, it literally is hell for him, or purgatory, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's not like, oh, he did it 20 times and now he's out. It's like, no, it's like, 5-10 years of living the same day over and over again. And I always, because of that, when I look at this episode, I'm guessing that, okay, you know what, those two characters, they have blown up in that truck, 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And
probably.
And that's why, you get both of them have lines where they're like, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
They're just like, we got to stop, and I think that's why, even though at one point Gina's like, look, we're never going to be friends, we don't like each other, they do become friends.
Yes.
and I think it's just because they're forced to be together for, all of those times, for, again, a year's worth of time in 20 minutes. Because again, that's the other thing, which I think is even worse than, at least in Groundhog Day, Bill Murray got to live a whole day.
Right.
He had 24
this is like
hours.
A set amount of time. Yeah.
Well, again, when the show starts, it's like 4:35 on the clock.
Yeah, and they're all about trying to make it past 5.
Right. So they literally they spend however long reliving like 20 minutes of their life. And just think, it would be maddening to relive the same day over and over again. Or imagine if you can only relive 20 minutes over and over. I mean, it would drive you nuts, right? I mean, it'd be crazy. So, but when they get to that point, that's always my assumption that, oh my God, we only saw 6, 8, 10, but I'm guessing you multiply that, by 100 at least, to really get a sense of how long these two have been stuck and have tried everything they can think of to break the loop, and it just, nothing works. And so again, it's terrifying, and it's also hilarious.
Yes, it is. I liked to. I was going to put in my 2 cents too, that you were talking about, like, when they would come back right after a loop would finish and they'd be back in, like, and they showed, Blair, tapping her fingers again and stuff like that. And I know it's the sound, but
and I'm Steve.
Yeah, I'm Steve. What I liked too was when you pointed out the thing where, Gina's getting bit and then it loops and she comes back in and she's in the office and she's, Mm-hmm. They did that kind of like where there was a tiny, like, 3-second bridge between the end of the loop and the restart of the loop. There's a little bit of a blend there, and until they realize, oh crap, we looped back around again. And I liked that. Like, for example, like when she does scream and next thing you know, she's in the office holding her shoulder and she's screaming. Like they did that and showed that a bunch of times. And I thought that was awesome. Just the blending of the two was really, really well done. So yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to move on and get to like the final Groundhog Day.
Oh, well, one thing that I was going to ask you about is the arc of the story. This is really Blair's story, because she's the character that actually changes. I mean, if you think about it, Gina, I'm going to ask you, do you think that that's true? Because Gina doesn't really change. Whereas Blair at the beginning of and during the initial parts of the story, she is this insensitive, selfish, boorish, biatch. and of course over time she changes, right? Because after a while she tells all the employees, you know what, we're closing early today.
Yeah.
When before it was, hey, let's hit the phones, I'm leaving early, right? And then she lets Gina go the one time, and she just stays to man Gina's desk for a while. And that's when she goes out and lets the ghoul bite her on the back of the neck. And then the last time we see them in the office, she basically tells everybody right away, everyone go home, or go wherever you want to go, and, go hoard, go survive, do whatever you want. And then the one dude's like, all right, I'll see you on Monday. It's just like, dude, you don't get it.
Yeah.
but anyway, and then the two of them kind of go out and go into the back and have this kind of heart to heart. And that's then when they finally break the loop the last time at the truck stop. But anyway, her character evolves and changes, but Gina really doesn't. So I'm wondering, why do you think Gina got stuck in the loop with her to where she would remember? Other than it's hilarious, because it is, because the two of them playing off each other is great. But you know what I mean? It's like this is Gina's hell. Or Blair's hell. She's stuck in this. Why did you think Gina got sucked along? Other than comedic gold.
Well, I think you might. How you took it is, and I see that as well. But I think if you look at both of them, they both said that thing where they're like, we're both cowards.
Mm-hmm.
We're both scared. And I think they both needed to. I disagree. I think Gina did change because she was afraid to confront Blair.
Mm-hmm.
And she never said anything to her about, even though Blair is like awful and treats her awful, she just never did it. And she sort of needed to like get the balls to do it and essentially be herself. She wasn't being a different person. She just needed to be more true to herself in that moment. And she did that. And I think they also, that's what broke the loop, was them not being afraid of the, you know what I mean? Like they let go of all of their fears. So, because they still screwed up. I mean, she drips all of that gasoline on the ground. and when it lights and they start to walk away, in my head, I literally had the thought, and I was like, isn't that fire just going to crawl right up the tube and boom, and there it did what it was supposed to do. So, but because of what led up to it, it didn't kill them. Mm-hmm. It just, knocked them sideways pretty much.
Oh, it gave them awesome hair.
It did. Wonderful, wonderful hair. So I don't know. I think it centered on Blair a lot, but I think Gina did change too. I think her change wasn't as drastic because Blair's was more of realizing a big personality flaw, a big, personality disorder.
Yeah. Well, she's the Scrooge character, right?
Right.
She's the one that at the end, lets Tiny Tim go home early. So yeah,
right.
I mean, and it's much more obvious. And you're right. And now that you say that, I'm thinking about the episode, and Gina does have that speech where she kind of says, I'm way too much of a pushover, and I should have spoken up a long time ago, and blah blah blah.
Right.
So yeah, maybe she finally, after a year of reliving this thing over and over again, she finally works up the the courage to like you said, to be herself and speak up and
right.
And actually defend herself. I guess I just, when I watch it, all I just think of is it's Blair is the one who changes, like the most obvious drastic changes. I mean, she gets rid of her Ken doll boyfriend. She, eventually lets everybody go right away and said, look, go be with your families, or, go just get out of here and, try and survive, and, all of that. Whereas in the beginning, that would have never happened, So.
Right. Yeah, I don't disagree. I think Blair's transformation was the bigger one of the two, but I think they were both stuck together because their transformation involved each other.
Okay.
Like Gina's needed to be more brave and speak out. Who better to do that with than the boss that you hate? And Blair's was to stop talking, to stop being that person. And when they showed that vulnerable moment with her and the boyfriend, and he was like, huh, what?
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's gonna grow and you're not gonna, and you're gonna die.
Poor Brian. No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a great line in there when Gina is just letting her have it, when she tells Blair, she says something about the one guy, like the reason why because Blair chastises Gina for not locking the back door.
Yes.
Right. She's like, I come in on Monday morning and the back door is unlocked. And finally, Gina, when she's letting her have it, tells her that the reason why that is because the one dude who works there comes in early on Monday so he can leave early so he can go watch his kid play soccer after school. And she said, and you would know that if you, and she phrased it by something like, if you talked with your employees as opposed to talking at them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I thought, was a big change, because later on, that's exactly what happens, is that Blair stops talking to them or at them and starts talking with them,
Right.
And so on. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, that's a really good idea. Thank you for helping with that, because it kind of, again, it's a small nit to pick for me because I really like this episode, but I kept thinking, I wonder why they didn't give Gina more of an arc for her to evolve to, because Blair's is so massive.
Right. Agreed. I totally agree that hers is the bigger one, for sure. Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about, as it sort of wraps to the end there. I just want to be clear that the cigarette not working in that final scene was so effing hilarious that it just didn't work. I'm like, the one time we needed to blow, the one time,
yeah.
Well,
it's just so great.
They're trying to prevent it for forever, and then when they need it to, it won't do it.
It just, and the way Parker Posey comes up and she, she's lit the cigarette and she takes a puff and gets it all, so the ashes, the burning
very
part
dramatic.
is and then she does, it's in slow motion, of course, and she takes it and she has that look on her face of like, oh yeah, this is totally gonna work, and then whoop, drops it, and then literally you see it and it falls, and the hot part goes right into the gas puddle, and it goes.
Yeah, and it extinguishes.
Oh,
son of a bitch.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, classic. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. And I did I liked that moment when everything was said and done, and they scrape themselves off the ground in that fantastic hair, and they start walking away, and Gina takes out her cell phone and takes a picture, and she's like, Jasmine's gonna love it, because there was the joke, the whole through line of the joke with the girl Jasmine in the office who doesn't like her hair, and I loved that moment. She was like, blah blah blah, when she freaked out in the beginning, and she was like, it's Jasmine, da da da, not liking her hair, and she's like, oh, I like your highlights.
I like your highlights.
And it was great. So so ending that with one last little nibble at that sort of joke circle and bringing it right back around again and saying, Jasmine's gonna love it. I'm like. And we both know, Jasmine's going to die. There is no Jasmine anymore. No. But her taking the picture just, hilarious to me, just to finish it off that way. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, that was, it was. It kind of, like you said, it brought it back to a fun moment there. Because, really, if you think about it, those two girls are most likely done.
Yes.
They're on foot. They have no supplies. They have no... We don't see if they have a phone even, right? They have no weapons, nothing. And they're in a part of Atlanta that's being shut down by the military.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like their prospects are not good. And they're heading into the city because they're going to try and find Gina's nieces.
Right.
Right. So, clearly an uncertain future, and certainly not a very positive one. Right. Where the odds are not forever in their favor.
Not at all.
So
Not
yeah,
at all.
but yet despite the fact that they're pretty much, heading into certain death, you have this little light moment to go out on where it's like, you know what, they're okay with each other, and that was fun.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very good.
Yeah.
Are there any points that you think we didn't quite hit on the episode? What was the part where it zagged and you didn't think it didn't go your way? Talk about that.
There's a moment in there, and it's about the 32-minute mark of the episode. I noted the time. And it's where we're back in the office, and I think it's where Parker Posey goes and throws up in the bathroom, and Gina goes in and they have this conversation in the bathroom. If you remember that, right?
Yes, yeah.
And it might have been right before that. I can't remember. But in any case, Gina basically says, "Just let me go. Just let me go. Let me go. I will go get the tanker because I have to." And I think she might have even said, it's because she wanted to use it to get her knee, whatever. So Parker Posey lets her go, and she leaves. And then Parker Posey is sitting in her chair, in Gina's chair, the receptionist chair. And all the other employees are kind of looking at her like, what do we do? And it's at that point, this is the first time that Parker Posey's like, you know what, everybody, we're closing early. And they're all literally like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And she's like, no, I mean it. We're going to close early. Everyone go. And they all get up and they leave. And so then she gets up, and that's when she walks out the back and she lets the ghoul bite her on the neck. Right. And then boom, the day resets, and they're both back there. And when I first saw that, my thought was, oh, right. I get it. The only way that they can break the loop is if both of them survive.
Yeah, so they both have to do something together.
So one of them can't get, because if you think about it, Gina didn't die. At least she didn't say she died. She just said she never got close to the park. Right?
Yeah.
Before the day reset.
She didn't confirm if she had died. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I thought it was like, okay, so now they're establishing how they break the loop, and that is, and at first I thought it was both of them have to survive, and then I started to think, well, maybe they also have to save Wendell, because Wendell dies when they finally take the truck, right? Because the ghoul gets up, and at least you hear it doesn't sound good for Wendell, and of course the Homeland Security guy is such a terrible agent, he can't shoot anybody. But then that was my point. I'm like, okay, that has to be what it is, but then it turns out that's not what it has to be at all, because they totally went away from that idea, and it just became, nope, we just have to figure out a way to get the tanker, and off they went. So anyway, that was just in my head. I'm like, okay, that's how they're going to break the loop, and then it turns out no, they broke the loop another way. So But again, and I kind of felt that the ending, as funny as it was with the cigarette and stuff, I was expecting something bigger than that to kind of finish it off.
Yes.
And when it did, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I thought it was funny, but it didn't it made me laugh, but it didn't. I was like, oh, that's it. There's no meat to it. You know what I mean? That's all.
And here's a question for you, and this thought crossed my mind. After the tanker explodes at the end on the bridge, and they both get blown, 20 feet away, and then they both kind of sit up, and they have this conversation, and I think Blair goes, "Are we dead?" And Gina goes, "No, I don't think we're dead." I almost thought that they were going to get up, and then when they start, when they get up and they're like cracking their back and they're like, and they're moving real slow, and then they kind of start shambling down the road, I
Yep.
almost thought that there was going to be a jump cut, and we see that they're up and they're walking down the road, but they're ghouls.
Oh, yeah. That'd be interesting.
And I think that's the one thing about the show in general for both episodes so far that I haven't seen yet that I've been expecting, which is where is the Twilight Zone twist?
Right.
Where is the ending that, because so far we've had 2 happy endings here, at least moderately happy endings, right?
Right.
And I where is the episode where nobody survives, where they don't make it, right? And we haven't gotten that yet. We haven't really had anything like that yet. The episodes of, other than the whole time loop thing, which is a wonderful device, and I thought it was well done here. The episodes have been pretty straightforward. So
Yeah.
what we'll have to see.
I agree. They've got to have some negativity in there.
Yeah, where again, it can be something as simple as, like you mentioned last week, the Twilight Zone with Burgess Meredith, where he wants to spend all of his time reading books, and finally when the world gets destroyed by the nuclear bombs and he's the survivor because he's in the vault reading, and he's like, finally, I'm not bothered by people. I have all the time in the world to read, and then he breaks his glasses. Right?
Yeah.
And so he can't. Something like that. When are we going to get an ending like that where, it's sort of like an ironic twist at the end, and we so far the first 2, they haven't done that. And maybe they won't do that at all. I don't know. It just, when I think of an anthology like this, since you like you've said, it's one and done for all these people, I think you can do that. You can take chances and have weirder, bad endings because, again, it's a one and done. You're never going to see these people again anyway. So
yeah, I have to admit that one of the things I was excited about was and I'm sure I've said it at some previous podcast. You guys can go back and find it for me if you want. But I'm sure at some point I must have been like, they can kill everybody if they want to.
Yeah, right.
And we haven't seen, other than people who I guess quote unquote deserved it, like the Sandra woman from last week.
Right.
We haven't seen anybody die that we had any kind of connection with, like no one that was like sort of at the forefront of a story.
Yeah.
So, and they have the ability to do that. We know they won't next week because duh.
Yeah, right. It's Alpha and Lydia, so we know that they're not gonna die this week.
Yeah, so it kind of takes a little bit of the the stuff out of that, but that's okay. But they do still have opportunity in those final 3 to have some sad endings, if you will, because that's the thing, is that's the reality of this. Like you were saying, it's more likely that it's a sad ending,
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All of those people that were in that office with Blair and Gina, they are all dead. Without question. They're all dead.
Yeah.
By now they are, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
The only time you would think no would be, and I've been wondering if they're going to do this, where, we'll see somebody from one of the other shows in kind of a supporting role like that. Like, one of those office workers turns out to be Eugene or something, you know what I mean? Where you're like, oh, okay, well, that dude's going to make it, know? But again, they have, I kind of hope that they don't do that, just because it would be kind of hard. It's like, really, you could tell a story about anyone, yet you're going to tell a story about that guy. You know what I mean? So I kind of hope they don't go that route. But you're right. All those office workers that she let home early, they're dead. They didn't.
They are. Yeah. Realistically, logically speaking, apply logic to it, and they're dead. Yeah,
they're dead. They're dead. Right. Sorry, they're dead.
Sorry, not sorry. You're dead. I think I hit all of my stuff. You hit your points there. I think we've covered everything on the episode we wanted to. Does that seem right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, again, I great episode. Comedy was high. There's a lot of great moments. Just the ending, I think, was not quite. I really thought they were building to something different, and then they just kind of ended, and it went on. But again, if the episodes continue to improve like they have between 1 and 2, by the time we get to the end, it's going to be in the best show on TV, because this is definitely head over heels better than the first one, and I like the first one. So
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss our listener feedback that we received and also what's coming up on the podcast.
So stick around. We'll be right back.
The following is an emergency action message. Civil authorities have identified a biological threat that they deem credible. This threat could potentially affect the entire continental United States.
The dead are returning to life and attacking the living.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a man up back. He's attacking another man. Looks like he's biting him, like on the arm.
The initial signs are puzzling, unclear.
Getting pulled out of their cars and thrown to the ground. It looks like the bus passengers are biting their victims.
Soon, however, the reality is clear and undeniable.
The crisis involving the recently dead continues. Parliament today passed a law that requires all bodies of the recently deceased to be registered and turned
Toxic
over.
Bag Productions has captured the sounds of the zombie apocalypse and brought them to your gaming table. Background ambiances, zombie attacks, and radio transmissions that set the scene for your modern zombie adventure. Download MP3s from drivethrurpg.com or toxicbag.com.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally going to get in. You better get ready for it.
Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head!
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a weekly podcast covering the hit AMC programs The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. Join hosts Diana and Steve as they recap and discuss the latest episodes. Aim for the Head, available on iTunes. You can also follow them on Facebook.
Hi, this is Tom Savini, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
Aim for the Head podcast.
Oh no, we're in a loop again.
Well, talking about how awesome Tom Savini was to do that promo you just heard, that'll get me out, right? Hey everybody, we are back. And
that was close.
We're making comedy everywhere.
It's comedy gold, people.
Yeah, yucca. All right, so amidst all this comedy gold, we've got to check out our feedback and see what you guys thought about this episode. And we also got some feedback for last week's episode as well. So, Steve, why don't you go ahead and get us started, and we'll get chatting about that.
All right, well, we'll start off. And again, like you said, this feedback comes from our international desk.
Yes.
This is feedback from our number one fan in Germany, Andy. And this is for last week's episode, Evie/Joe, because they get the episodes a little bit behind us. So Andy starts off, and this came via the email, to say, hi, Diana and Steve. It's so good to hear your lovely voices again.
Aww.
Because I really missed that. Oh, thank you again.
Aww.
He goes, I liked Fear better than this anthology series. Really? Okay. Well, he said Fear was bad, but often in a funny way, and there was stuff to discuss. This episode was just trivial. Nothing of interest happened, and there is nothing I feel is worthy of discussion. Of course, one wouldn't ride a bike in the middle of the night during a post-apocalypse or give up the perfect base, but I never got survival vibes from this episode. It's just two guys fooling around. The fight against the woman with the cleaver at least was like comedy. He goes, I also watched the second episode already, and it's even worse than this one. Oh, wow. He goes, I gave up after 10 minutes, so it seems this anthology is nothing for me. About the Rick and Michonne series, I'm a bit tired of these empty promises. The Rick movies, the Daryl Carroll series, now this one. I'll believe it when I see it. And I'm right there with you on that, because there have been a lot of empty promises made about some shows here from the Walking Dead.
Correct.
He goes on to say, I found another post-apocalypse series, though, which I really like, so it's not too bad that The Walking Dead offers nothing for me at the moment. He goes, I'm talking about C, which is a show starring Jason Momoa, I believe. And it's a post-apocalypse thing, I think, where everybody's blind. And,
yes, I remember that.
There's like one person who, I don't know if it's a child or something, but someone's born or someone shows up that can see. And now suddenly they're, what is the old saying, right? In the land of the blind, the man with sight is the king, or whatever it is. So, anyway, that I believe is what he's talking about. And then he goes, the final season is about to be aired soon. Same goes for Snowpiercer. So I won't need The Walking Dead for my daily dose of post-apocalypse. And then he finishes by saying, greetings from Germany, Andy. And he goes, P.S. I've also listened to your interview, but since I'm not a fan of horror movies and didn't know the actor, it was not that interesting for me. Well, Andy, I'm sorry.
Well, at least he listened. He listened. Thank you for listening,
so
Andy.
That was nice.
He went in knowing that it was, because we were honest. We knew we said who Pat Tillman was. So and you knew that she was an actress from horror movies.
And so Andy, if you didn't know anything about her before you started, maybe you came away from it and you learned a little bit about her career and some of the stuff that she had done as a stunt woman as well as an actor. But anyway, wonderful feedback. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm sorry that you didn't like definitely the episode 2, because I thought it was. I think we both thought it was really good. But I think we're kind of right with you there on the first one, in that it was nothing of interest really happened, right? And I think we kind of said that last week. So you're not alone there, and I hope that C and Snowpiercer will fill that empty section of your post-apocalypse cabinet until we get to October and the final 8 of Walking Dead starts.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you so much for writing in, Andy. Even though you're not going to probably watch the series, I hope we'll still hear from you.
I know. Oh, well, hey, we got 6 weeks till October, so maybe in 6 weeks we'll get another message from him. So
yes, exactly. So if you don't write in again until the main series comes back on, then we look forward to talking to you in October. So there you go.
Yes.
All right. So next up, we got a piece of feedback that was about episodes 1 and 2. Our good friend Alex Baelish. Hello,
What's
Alex.
Up? Our P1 is back.
I know he had some regret when I published the episode, or I think when I sent the message saying sorry it would be late. I was having some work, like too much work, and I couldn't get to editing the podcast. He responded and was like, yeah, I guess I never sent in feedback then, huh? So here he is with that feedback. So thanks for writing in, Alex. We appreciate it as always. And Alex says, Diana and Steve, at first I was up in the air with the first episode. I do love both actors, but it was kind of blah. After the second watch, I really started to like them and would love to see more of their story. They both can kick ass, and them trying to search for their bike would be fun to watch. The continuing adventures of Edie and Joe searching for their motorcycle.
Spin-off.
Now to the great stuff. You never piss off a crazy cat lady. WTF, it was chilling how she turned into Mommy Dearest. That's true, with like the cream on her face and everything. All that. Creepy. All I could think of was no wire hangers ever. I still don't understand why they did not hold up in there for a while. I know. Yep. I would say that that's pretty consistent across the board. Every podcast I've listened to, every person who sent in feedback for those podcasts that I listened to, everybody has pretty much said, whether they liked it or disliked it, everyone across the board is like, why did you not stay there? Or why did you not at least stay long enough, fill bag, then leave, Yeah. Makes no sense. Okay, so Alex continues and says, that place was better than any place I've ever seen in the universe. I know. All in all, there was a reason and a plot, so they can't do more story on them, since Fear proved to us that this is not what the higher-ups want, is more story, apparently. So then he goes on to say about episode 2. He says, well, I'm so glad to see The Walking Dead pay tribute to Bill Murray. Zombie Groundhog Day. Really, I have never been a big fan of Parker Posey, so going into it, I was not too pumped. I will say the actress who played Gina was awesome. I think their chemistry was good. I just did not like the story at all. It was cool to see Sam from Ozark showing up on TV as well. I didn't watch Ozark, so I'm not sure which character that was. One last thing, the Taker explosion scene was smoking. I think that's how he wanted me to say it. And then he just says, bye.
And I'm done.
And scene. So there. All right. Thanks for writing in, Alex. As always, we love it. Your stuff is so funny.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That is really good stuff. And I'm sorry that you're not more of a Parker Posey fan, because I have always liked her. And I just looked it up here because I wanted to be sure. But the actor he's talking about from Ozark, he is the guy in the office who he's the guy that leaves the door unlocked on Monday.
Oh, okay.
The guy he had kind of the beardy stubble. And and he was the one that was like, he's the one that says, like, it says on the TV that people are biting and scratching, and he was the more worried one, right? He, the other dude, that was like the top sales guy, and then you had Jasmine, who was trying to be the top salesperson, and then you had that guy, this guy, the actor's name is Kevin Johnson, and he was sort of the other salesman in the office. But that's who he's referring to. So.
Oh, interesting. There you go. Ozark is, as I've said before, people, it's on the list. But I have so many other things on the list. Yes, there are many things on the list. But thankfully, Ozark is done, so it's not like I have to worry about more seasons piling up. And then when the time comes, I'll have to binge like 6 seasons. I think it's only 3, right? 3 or 4?
I think it's 4, maybe, yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's not too bad. I can do that.
Okay.
That's like a couple weekends. Big deal. Anyway, moving on.
All right, moving on, and this now is all feedback for just the most recent episode, number 2. This comes from our pal Amelia again. So Amelia, two weeks in a row. Hello, this is very cool.
Hello.
And Amelia, of course, is part of the Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique podcast, which you can find wherever your podcasts live. And she says, this second story feels to me like someone on the Walking Dead writing staff had a short story they wrote years ago that had nothing to do with this universe. And then they shoehorned some zombies into it, so it could be part of this universe. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the hell out of it. I'm not sure I would have liked it as much if it weren't Parker Posey and Gillian Bell, though. It does really make me curious what sorts of stories are coming up and how many more might be like this one. And that is from Amelia. And again, that's what we were just saying. When are we going to get the dark story?
Yeah.
When are we going to get one that's not quite so upbeat and happy? And again, I love it. I love the comedy, and I think that's the number one thing I enjoyed the most out of both of the stories was the interplay between the two main characters.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Whether it was Terry Crews and Olivia Munn last week, or Parker Posey and Gillian Bell this week, they're great. They're funny. They worked well. It was they had the kind of that crackling dialogue, and the way they were doing it was wonderful. But again, I totally up for a let's kill everybody in the episode story. I'm okay with that. Like you said, this is your chance, guys. Let's go to town. So yeah, we'll have to see, Amelia. I'm really curious what this episode next week is, because next week we're getting into a character that we already know.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. All right. Thanks again for writing in, Amelia. Love hearing from you every week. It's great. Mm-hmm. And I have to give a shout out too. Thank you so much for emailing that feedback, because I think Amelia is watching the episode right away and is sending the feedback in right away, but she's sending it via email so that it's not spoiling people in our feed. So thank you.
Cool.
Thank you for that. That's very, very nice of you. Next up, we got some really quick and to the point feedback from Barry Pettis via feedback.
Barry.
Via Facebook, not via feedback, but via Facebook. That's what the FB stands for. I've got it together now. And Barry says, I don't even know what to say. That's an hour I will never get back. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that Barry didn't like this episode, but I'm spitballing here.
I concur.
You concur.
Yes, I agree. I'm guessing that he was not a fan of the Groundhog Day ode that we got.
Not a fan. Yeah, not a fan. Just completely not a fan. Yeah. And we did get some late feedback from. I'm just getting this from our Twitter feed. I was saying this was our last piece of feedback, and it reminded me I've reached out to someone who didn't want to spoil us. One of our listeners, Tammy, on Twitter, she responded right away before the episode aired, and she says, I watched it last week and I loved it. I won't say anything else. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I thought it was really good. So she really liked the episode. But I responded earlier this morning and I said, well, let us know what you thought. I mean, the episode's over now, so you're not going to spoil anyone. And then I forgot I had done that until just now. So she says, I don't know how it fits in with the universe as a whole, but I loved it. I thought it was a fun episode. It gave me Happy Death Day vibes. I loved the work setting and that it dealt with coworkers that didn't like each other. She says, I could totally relate to that. I have some coworkers that I am not fond of. So that was Tammy's take. So thank you, Tammy. I'm so glad that I remembered that I asked you to follow up with the feedback. And I guess it's a second thank you to Amelia, because if Amelia hadn't sent it in a way that wouldn't spoil, it wouldn't have reminded me about Tammy's feedback, which she was afraid of spoiling. And isn't that all just lovely how it all worked together like that?
It's all interconnected. I love it.
It is all interconnected. So coming up on the podcast, we've mentioned it already a couple of times, but next week's episode of Tales of the Walking Dead, episode 3, the title of it is D. D-E-E, as in like a nickname or a name, D. And as we've mentioned, this is the quote-unquote the Samantha Morton alpha story.
And Lydia.
And apparently Lydia appears as well.
She's not Cassie McClinchy Lydia. She's like younger, like 8-year-old Lydia, whoever that's going to be.
Yeah, so I'm curious where it's going to fall in the timeline, because I can't tell yet. It looks like the Lydia is a little older than the one that we saw in the flashback where she first meets Beta. So I don't know where that falls in the timeline just yet. So we'll have to find out. Maybe it's just before they meet Beta, and I'm just misremembering how young or not so young Lydia is in that scene. So we'll have to see. They did give us a quick description of the episode, and it says a mother evolves. That's so interesting. Such a great word to use. A mother evolves after she and her daughter escape violence and take refuge on a vintage steamboat. The peaceful ambiance deteriorates when a coup attempt forces the mother to revisit her violent past in order to protect her child. I mean, I would assume something comes up and it makes her think about her marriage or whatever, because wasn't her marriage violent or something like that? Or maybe there's some other part of her past we don't know about yet.
Based on that description, I would almost think that this would be slotted in between when we first meet her and, you know, we see the husband and her and the kid and they're in the shelter with all the other folks. And then the flashback where they meet Beta, I think it has to be between those two. But again, you're right. I can't honestly tell you how old was the Lydia character in the Beta story versus how old she looks now. I mean, is it the same actor? I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen enough of it to figure that out. So I'm not sure, but that would make the most sense to me. Because don't you think that once she finds Beta, they don't separate?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think he lets her out of his sight very much for like the next few years.
Right. So
yeah, and then when she's gone, he plasters her to his own face. So
that's right.
His connection is pretty deep, that's for sure.
Look, Beta just wanted to get ahead. I mean,
no, you didn't. We were doing so well. We were making actual good jokes.
Come on now.
No, there's no excuse for that kind of behavior.
All right.
You need to turn in your comedy card. That's unacceptable.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's just wrong.
Bad. It's just bad. It's not as wrong. It's not as bad as what you said, but okay. All right. So we wanted to remind people, in case you weren't aware, And then we asked last week if you were aware as well, but we're not sure if you're aware. But did you know that we interviewed Patricia Tallman? I mean,
we did.
Andy knows that we interviewed Patricia Tallman because
Right.
he listened to that episode. But did you listen to that episode? We interviewed Patricia Tallman. Patricia Tallman played Barbara in the remake of Night of the Living Dead, the Tom Savini directed.
Directorial
Tom
debut
Savini.
of Tom Savini.
Yeah, Tom Savini of the promo you just listened to like about 15 minutes ago. That Tom Savini.
That Tom Savini.
Yeah, Sex Machine. You've met him, right? You've seen him. Anyway, my point is Patricia Tallman from Babylon 5, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
That was
okay.
the
I
other
was like,
main
I'm gonna.
big show
I
she
was. I could not remember the name of the show. I was like, I'm gonna muff this, aren't I? So yeah, Patricia Tallman. She was sweet. She was kind. She's amazing. We had a lovely conversation with her, and we talked about a lot of things, not just horror movies, and showed things she's done. Of course, we talked a little bit about Night of the Living Dead because that's one of the things she's most well known for. Talked a little bit about Babylon 5. We talked about acting in general and just things like that.
Talked
Talked
about her stunt career.
Yeah, we talked about things she's doing these days too. She's doing a travel sort of adventure company, and it's really interesting. And she's a fellow nerd, and she's just lovely. She was lovely. We had a lovely time, and we'd love to share it with you. So back up. At this point now, it's 2 episodes. To episode 262, and give that a listen if you get a chance. If you know someone in your life who's a fan of Patricia Tallman or a fan of Babylon 5, forward it along to them. Let them know. She was lovely, and I'm sure people would enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, just to hear her talk about the Quest Retreats, which is her current business that she runs, and these like trips, these like, you know, amazing trips that she organizes for people to go nerd out, like go to New Zealand and like tour all the Lord of the Rings filming locations and stuff like that. I mean, that's like an actual thing that she did. You know, I mean, it's awesome. It's unbelievable. If you're geeky about any of that stuff, if you're nerdy about any of that stuff, which if you're not, why are you listening to this podcast? So clearly you are. You get a kick out of it. She was really cool.
Yeah, she really, really was. Yeah, and anything else that we have coming up that we should let people know about? We don't go to a convention for quite a bit. We've got a little bit of a nice rest here for a little bit.
Yeah,
well deserved.
Yeah, the next show in this area, in the Chicago area, is in November, and it'll be Days of the Dead Chicago at the Crown Plaza in lovely Rosemont. And then I think that's really it for around here for this year. And then we go into 2023 and we'll start all over again. So my wallet, my checking account definitely appreciates the respite.
I completely agree. Did want to give people a heads up though too that I will be on vacation the week of Labor Day once again. So we'll have a podcast like normal next week, but then we are going to unfortunately have to skip the week after when that's episode, I believe, 4. So the week after that, we will cover both episodes 4 and 5 together. And then, of course, we'll get the finale the week after.
That's right.
Yep. So just we'll remind people after the next week's episode too, but I'll likely send out some posts to look for feedback anyway. So if you're watching it as it whether it's on AMC Plus, you can always email the feedback to us like Amelia and Alex do, or you can always respond to the Facebook posts, which I will of course put up anyway, even though we won't be recording that week, and I'll put the reminder out too. So yeah. Right. Yep. I'm excited for the Alpha one, but I'm still really excited for the Anthony Edwards one because I just think he's adorable, and he, I spent so much time watching ER, and he's just such a touchstone, and I just think he's a wonderful, wonderful actor, and
he's Goose.
He's Goose. He is. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that episode as well. So, but next week is Alpha.
Is D Alpha.
D Alpha D.
Yeah, Alpha D.
Yeah, Alpha D, D Alpha. Who knows? So that's going to do it for us this week, everybody. We look forward to chatting with you again next week when we talk about episode 3, Tales of Walking Dead. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because body shots just don't work. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
Oh, it says Diana started recording.
Yep, it says starting recording. Oh my goodness. Oh, Diana's recording the call. That's illegal. God.
It is illegal if I don't tell you.
No, it's actually in Illinois, it's a one-person consent. So as long as you know the call is being recorded, it's fine.